Roadmaster. Just the name evokes the very American ideal of owning the road, wide open spaces, and eating up the miles effortlessly. Built in three distinct eras, the Buick Roadmaster finally faded away with the decline of American rear-wheel drive full-size sedans. This is a far too brief history of the Roadmaster. Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I am John. In the 1930s, it was GM's convention to name cars as series. For example, a Series 60 or a Series 90. Up until 1933, Buick had a Series 80 that was canceled, then released a new one in 1936 at a time when GM began assigning names to the series. The top-of-the-line Series 90 was known as the Limited, the Series 60 was the Century, named because it could cruise at 100 miles an hour, and the new Series 80 was the Roadmaster. Sales literature from the time said it literally named itself, and that it was a, quote, boss of time, distance, straightaway, grade, curve, and the open road, and that a 100-pound woman can drive it all day long without strain. Offered in two models, a sedan and a convertible, it came with a heavily revised 320 cubic inch straight 8, making 120 horsepower, and had hydraulic brakes. Priced at $1,255 for the sedan, it was about $440 less than the entry-level Cadillac. With the Roadmaster and renamed lineup, the Buick sales jumped from 48,000 to 158,000, with the Roadmaster earning it just over 16,000 of those, or about 10%. In 1937, they were restyled with a divided grille with horizontal bars. Horsepower was tweaked to 130, and a, quote, formal sedan with roll-down glass partition between the front and the rear seats was added. Prices increased slightly to $1,518, and sales increased slightly to $16,129. For 1938, styling was once again updated, and the rear leaf springs replaced with coil springs, and the engine was tweaked to now provide 141 horsepower. The convertible now had a fastback appearance. Prices once again increased now to $1,756 for the sedan, but with a declining auto market, sales plunged to just $5,568 for the year. For 1939, styling was again tweaked, prices reduced, but sales only rose to just over $6,000 for the year. 1940 was a big change, with the Series 80, now known as the Limited, and the Roadmaster on a new Series 70 platform shared with the Cadillac Series 62 and the old Series 90. Styling once again by Harley Earl was far more contemporary, with the elimination of running boards and increased width by 5 inches, and the car was lowered by between 2 and 3 inches on a shorter and lighter platform that also cost less. Sales tripled to over 18,000. 1941 styling changes changed little, but the engine was worked on with increased compression ratio, redesigned pistons, and compound carburation, consisting of two-barreled carburetors, with one being available for hard acceleration. Horsepower was up to 165, making it the most powerful engine available on any American car that year. They also added a two-door convertible, but sales fell overall to just 15,000. For 1942, the Roadmaster was once again redesigned to be longer, lower, wider, and roomier, with a new longer wheelbase and the new sweep spear styling, heavily influenced by the gorgeous wide job concept car. Interestingly, the one-piece hood was double-hinged so that it could be opened from either side, a feature now relegated to interior consoles that can still amaze reviewers. With World War II looming and manufacturing shut down in February, they produced less than 8,400. After the war ended, production resumed with minor changes. A new bomb sight hood ornament was added, the compound carburation was discontinued, compression ratio dropped, and horsepower fell to 144, although torque was unchanged. With inflation, the prices were higher, but Buick sold 31,400 in 1946. 1947 and 48 saw mostly cosmetic changes, such as labeling on the fenders, cloth upholstery options, but a new estate wagon was offered. In 1948, the Dynaflow was introduced, the first passenger car torque converter transmission, first as an option and then as standard equipment in 1949. Sales were up to just under 80,000 per year now. For 1949, the Roadmaster got its first major redesign after the war, once again reducing the wheelbase, the length, but increasing the weight. The two-piece windshield remained, but importantly, the venti ports were introduced across the lineup, with the Roadmaster getting 4. Original sales literature indicated that they were there to help ventilate the engine compartment, but eventually they became just styling features. Interestingly, they arose when Ned Nichols, the styling chief for Buick, put 4 amber lights on each side of his own 1948 Roadmaster, wired to the distributor and intended to flash on and off as each piston fired to simulate the flames from the exhaust of a fighter plane. The automatic was now standard, HP increased to 150, and the Riviera two-door hardtop coupes appeared mid-year. Sales increased to 88,130. In 1950, yet more styling tweaks, but with a new long wheelbase sedan 4 inches longer was introduced and included power windows and seats as standard, and now with a one-piece windshield. Sales fell to just over 75,000. Changes were minimal in 51 and 52, with power steering added as an option in 52 and horsepower now up to 170 with a new 4-barrel carburetor. Sales were 66,000 in 51 and just 51,000 in 1952. For 53, a new V8 was introduced to replace the now venerable Fireball inline 8. Commonly called the Nailhead, it was nearly the same displacement at 322 cubic inches, but shorter and lighter, and offered 188 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque. The new engine allowed Buick to shrink the Roadmaster's wheelbase by 4.75 inches. A new version of the Dynaflow was introduced. Power steering and power brakes were standard. AC was a new option, and a 12-volt electrical system was used. Also new was a Skylark convertible added to the lineup. Not a strong seller, it was more than a chop top of the Roadmaster, but forecast the next year's styling direction. For the year, Roadmaster sales jumped to 79,000. For 1954, the Roadmaster got the new GM C-body chassis and a heavily revised styling. The wheelbase increased up to 5.5 inches longer and overall length up by more than 9 inches. The rear featured small fins and bullet tail lamps, the front a panoramic windshield with nearly vertical A-pillars. Horsepower increased to 200 and the estate wagon was dropped. Sales fell to 50,571 units. In 1955, you'll be surprised to know that styling was tweaked, horsepower increased to 236, a new Dynaflow was added, and sales rose to over 64,000. 1956 again tweaked the styling, had an improved transmission, and a new 4-door Riviera hardtop was introduced and became a top seller. Roadmaster sales fell overall to 53,427. The 57s were heavily revised, most importantly, a new 364 cubic inch V8 now producing 300 horsepower, a new suspension to improve handling, and the standard sedan was dropped from the lineup. Mid-year, they offered a Series 75 Roadmaster with standard power seats and windows, carpeted lower doors, one-piece rear window, and hubcaps and exterior bling to identify the model. With the economy in a recession since 1956, sales fell to just 33,000. 1958 got a new grille design and 4 headlamps, and the Ventaports were abandoned. Sales tanked to just 14,000. For 1959, the cars were completely restyled, but the Roadmaster name was dropped, and the Electra took its place in the Buick lineup. Roadmaster returned in 1991 after a 33-year absence with the restyling of the B-body cars like the Chevy Caprice. Still based on the largely same platform since 1977, the Roadmaster came in 2 body styles at this time, an estate wagon and a 4-door sedan, notably the first rear-wheel drive Buick since 1985. The wagons had wood grain siding, a Vista roof over the rear seats, and were able to carry 4x8 sheets of plywood when the rear seats were folded. While the Park Avenue was the top-of-the-line Buick at the time, the Roadmaster had a 5-inch longer wheelbase and was about 10 inches longer overall. It was longer in wheelbase and length than the Sedan DeVille. At launch for power, they dipped into GM's parts bin and dug up the 5-liter L03 Chevy V8, producing 170 horsepower, But in 1992, they upgraded to a 5.7-liter LO5, making 180, and then in 94, an upgrade to the LT1 from the Corvette, giving 260 horsepower, a corporate engine also used in the Caprice police package, the Fleetwood, and versions of the Camaro and the Firebird. Yes, 33 years later, and they almost reached the power of the V8 from 1958. For shifting, every Roadmaster used a 4-speed automatic, originally the 4L60 and later in 94 the 4L60E. The car could also be equipped with a factory towing package, allowing it to haul up to 5,000 pounds in the sedan and up to 7,000 in the wagon after the 94 model year. The interior was redesigned in 1994 and minor exterior changes were made in 95, although it kept its skirted wheels. The Roadmaster sold modestly well, topping 70,000 units in 1992 and ended up selling over 200,000 in 6 years. But as GM was canceling the platform to focus on large SUVs and pickups and their larger profit margins, the Roadmaster had no platform or an assembly location, and sadly was canceled, ending an era. In my early 20s, I lusted after a Roadmaster. At a time, I spent a lot of time on the highway, and a large, comfortable cruiser was my dream, and that's when I fell in love with them. Always more appealing to me than the Chevy counterparts, I can look back at them now critically, but that desire to own one and to be master of the road is still appealing. Thanks for being here, and special thanks to my Patreons. If you support independent news, opinions, and histories like this, please consider supporting the channel. And you might want to check out this next video, which was a history of Oldsmobile.